Alright guys, welcome back to the Filmmaker's Time Chamber. I'm your host, actor, writer, director, Alexander Allione Jr. Let's get started. This week we shall be reviewing Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So as per usual, we're going to be diving right in. So if you haven't seen this movie, go watch it in theaters, come back, and we shall review it together. So, alright, diving right in. Now, I had a lot of hesitations and worries coming into this movie after the mess that was Crystal Skull. Obviously, so many bad reviews from hardcore fans and new fans alike. There was just so many so many missed things. Oversaturated with the CGI. Indy surviving a nuclear bomb in a refrigerator. Just so much gone wrong. A lot of people didn't like the aliens. Either way, decided to come give this one a chance despite all of that. And it was miles better than Crystal Skull. So if you were worried about it, that it was going to kind of have the same tonality, they came back to their original Indiana Jones roots, and it feels much more grounded than, what they try to do in Crystal Skull with all the almost Fast and the Furious physics and antics. So, so let's start off with, we see, start the movie with a young Harrison Ford / Indiana Jones, brought to you by the de-aging CGI, and holy crap, did it look so good. It looked just like they had stock footage of it. It looked so good, and I think it looked so good I would watch an entire movie of just young Indiana Jones, just because of how, old Harrison Ford is getting as a person, and his character in the movie is struggling. He's climbing up, scaling a mountain. He's like, my shoulders, and, he's just been shot, and it's just like, it's no longer believable because of his age, and it takes away from the believability of the story. And you want to cheer for Indiana Jones, but when you have this old guy taking on all these people, with a whip, it's just like, and then he gets shot through the movie as well. For like 20 minutes of the movie, he gets shot like 2 inches above his heart, and the man's just like, okay. I mean, obviously in pain and sluggish, but, there's still a lot that the franchise is missing. They're turning it, like I said, kind of into almost into like a James Bond-esque character. And we have to remember, what makes Indiana Jones so great is kind of similar to what makes Jackie Chan so great, is that they're kind of doing things, actiony, but still almost like as a mistake. Like they're kind of doing it as they go along, whereas James Bond is always 4 or 5 steps ahead and, untouchable. And even if he gets shot, he can just walk it off, because there's just this enigmatic presence to that character, where, like I said, Indiana Jones is, more laid in the comedy aspect of it, and not, obviously not overuse of humor, but just like Jackie Chan does, using humor as storytelling, as saying that this is the kind of character he is. And that's why so many people thought Chris Pratt would be a great replacement for Harrison Ford, is because of the humor he brings to his performances, that level of charismatic, almost like dopiness. And like I said, kind of like that Scooby-Doo, how Scooby-Doo will accidentally jump and, knock over the villains by mistake and then solves it. And so, yeah, to see that the younger version of him do all that, because when it's de-aged, it's obviously a younger photo double or stunt actor who's doing those things, all the stunts, and not Harrison Ford himself. So it looks so much more believable. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed the first beginning segment so much more than the later segments because of that. And also just because Indiana Jones just feels more right in the older age. Obviously, he has to age up eventually. Times have to become modern. But it just feels more authentic to the character and to the franchise and storyline when we see him in these older settings. So once again, the beginning of the movie, just for me, hit it out the park. Those, flashback CGI scenes of him being de-aged. Now, the character Mutz, I forgot, his son, played by Shia LaBeouf, was mentioned in kind of a kind of pivotal point to the story that he died after going to, enlist himself to go to war, to piss off his father, and that eventually caused the breakup between him and Marion, or divorce, I should say, split. I don't know how to, whatever word you want to use. Um, I thought that was a emotional little arc, but a miss as well. I know that may have to do with something about Shia LaBeouf. Personally, I don't know. I really love what he brought. I would have loved to see him carry the mantle of Indiana Jones. Um, Once again, I feel like it's missing that, you know, someone younger to take on the mantle. And once again, someone like a Shia LaBeouf or Chris Pratt that bring in humor with their performance as well, not just pure, action. And so, yeah, I thought that was a bit of a miss. I would have liked to see his character play more of a role. Really loved. I thought he was one of the only redeeming points of Crystal Skull was Shia LaBeouf as an actor and the character as well, and who it meant to Indiana Jones. It's his son. So, setting that up as the future of the franchise and then killing him off screen in between movies, not the best idea. Not the best idea at all. Now, obviously from the very first Indiana Jones movie, we've dealt with the supernatural. And so them now bringing in time travel, just like, what a trip, what a trip. And we get to see Archimedes himself. We go back in time. We see the Romans, and definitely did not expect that. A wild ending for sure. Once again, implications. Whenever you introduce time travel, it basically just allows you to do whatever the fuck you want. Pardon my French, but yeah, you can do whatever you want at this point now that you have time travel. Like I said, where Indiana Jones is starting to feel very much like Fast and Furious, which is like, let's just do whatever we can to keep the franchise going. And it's a shame because I'm a huge fan of this franchise. He inspired me to want to be an archaeologist, and then once I saw Jurassic Park, I wanted to be a paleontologist. So, but yeah, he still had a very early effect on me early on about wanting to discover history and be, culturally enriched and learn about these ancient, civilizations, and you know, be aware of just what happened. And you know, and yes, he was an action star, but there was this whole sense of, like I said, and this movie definitely had heavy layers of that. Once again, which I said, it returned back to its roots, um, and I think it needs to rely more on its roots about, almost in a sense of like a national treasure, relying more on the lore, and the booby traps rather than, just the action, car chasing and riding a horse in a subway. It's just a lot of these scenes, I call them fluff, should have been chopped out for meat of the story. When they're in a temple and they're breaking down the hieroglyphs, that's meat. That's, not only are they informing the audience, but they're also informing, I'm sorry, not only are they informing the characters about what they need to do, but they're informing the audience about these past events. And so, yeah, the movie, I believe, was oversaturated in this action sequences. It was 2.5 hours, I believe, a little too long for me. I would have liked to seen it condensed and focused more on the meat rather than the fluff. Once again, just my personal opinion. Everyone's entitled to their own opinions. Um, but yeah, I just found myself really gravitated to those moments of when it returned to the roots of Indiana Jones. It felt authentic. I was like, yeah, I haven't felt like this since I was a kid. When my father first showed me these, movies, and the music by John Williams, and the hat and the whip and the vibes, and the comedic little things. There was a lot of older people in the crowd, and they were laughing at these little moments. Once again, the comedy plays a huge part into the storytelling. And, once again, it brought back those earlier vibes of those earlier roots. So I appreciated what they did there. And I wish they had done that all over, as opposed to still trying to make it a little bit more modern, a little bit more actiony to try to keep up. I just reviewed, my last review was about past lives. You don't have to have a complex story to tell a beautiful story and keep your audience enraptured. You can do it simply. And I believe that Indiana Jones is better when you're more simple and practical as well. Once again, I return to the oversaturation of CGI. that boulder was real in the Raiders. It wasn't an actual real boulder, but it was a practical boulder you could touch and you can see rolling and, see the light bouncing off of it. And, there's so much more and layered, to be said with practical effects rather than CGI. It helps with the actors as well, helps with the audience process it. And so I would have liked to seen them once again return to pure practical rather than the oversaturation. It just takes away, and once again, it feels like a Fast and the Furious rather than Indiana Jones. I know I keep repeating myself, but I don't want to feel that way when I'm watching Indiana Jones. I want to see the practical, him swinging on an actual rope. And yeah, even if it's on like, you know, you have like just a foot drop underneath. We don't have to see below that foot. They did all this stuff in the 70s. Just do it again, now with better practicals. It blows my mind that, that they don't think to just do what they did before, but better. But instead, it's just they abandon it completely and just choose another form of storytelling. And it takes away, once again, when you have a story like this, the practicality makes it feel more authentic instead of CGI'd, snakes. They had real snakes, CGI'd eels. They had real snakes. And so, yeah, we needed more practical and yeah, more that Indiana Jones indie vibes. Um, Now, obviously, Harrison Ford also played Han Solo as well, and I do like the similarities between the two of how they see crazy things and they still they're in denial. He's like, oh, I've seen a lot of things. I don't believe in magic, and so also Han Solo was like, I don't believe in the Force. You're telling me there's all one grand Force, and then by the end, both characters have to accept reality for what it is, and it's like, yeah, this stuff is real. It's out there, and it's just, I always like when actors play similar roles because it's just, it's. I feel like it's meant to be. It's little signs from the universe. Um, one, I once again, um, diving into the parts I did not really enjoy. I didn't like Baz's daughter. Um, Nothing against the actress. It was the way the character was written as well as a little boy. Throughout 75, 80% of the movie, even 85% of the movie, they're still villains trying to sell these items off and just make a buck. And there's no real, and they betray, she betrays India a few times, and there's no real redeeming quality except for this obligational and default, where they save his life at the end, obligation and default. And once again, she even said it herself. It had nothing to do with Indiana Jones. She did it to save the timeline. And I just didn't like their characters, in terms of the story. Like, they didn't feel redeemed. They could have been written so differently, and I just didn't like this. I couldn't connect with their characters. It felt hard, and that was Indy's only, friends throughout. Of course, yeah, they brought back his taxi driver for a quick scene or two, literally two scenes, more of a cameo than a role in the movie, which I always argue, you know, I don't think you should have cameos for the sake of cameos. If you're going to bring in a character, that if that character should have, even if you have him in for just a small two scenes, have that character play a role in the movie that no other character do. Where if you take this character out of the story can't happen. When you have a cameo for the sake of a cameo, it feels empty gestured. It just, I appreciated it, liked seeing him, but it just, you know, he should have done something a little more that no one else was able to do, even if he is only in for those two scenes. I understand time constraints, but in terms for sake of writing, it just doesn't feel, it doesn't feel anything. It's just like, hey, bye, okay. So, but yeah, her character, I couldn't connect with it either. She's just trying to be a villain, and yeah, it's just, I couldn't do it. And another thing was just the villains, obviously they shot him, but they just are keeping him alive at every turn. And it just seems like, I don't know, it just seems so silly that the villain would keep him alive at every single turn when he's been, a fork in their shoe every single turn. And at one point, you shoot him in the head and go, all right, we're done with this guy, and him being in their grasp the majority of the time, it just, I didn't enjoy that at all. Of them just capturing him several times and just leaving him be several times, even after, He's like, all right, well, he escaped and baffled us once. All right, well, you escaped and baffled us again. And it's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And so you don't really have, threatening villains when they decide to do stuff like that. It doesn't make it feel like the stakes are real or high. It feels like almost like not even like, but he's padded. It's like, oh yes, we'll keep Indiana Jones alive because he's the character we have to keep alive. And it's just like, no rhyme or reason. It sounds silly, but I would have, it would have been interesting if they killed him and then went back in time and brought him back to life, or whatever it is, just something else besides just having him be a prisoner most of the time, like several times, get captured and then released, and then captured and released and captured and released, and then these villains once again just decide at the most optimal moments is just to still let it happen again. So Einstein himself said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So for me, it's insanity watching these villains do the same thing over and over again and then expect different results. So yeah, overall, this movie I give a 3 out of 5 stars. Being generous with this three, just because Crystal Skull was so bad and this was better than Crystal Skull. So yeah, I would like a lot, as you've heard me describe throughout this video, there's a lot of things I would fix and enhance to make it feel more like an Indiana Jones movie. And so I really hope they continue this franchise. I know Harrison Ford said he doesn't want anyone else playing the role of Indiana Jones, but they can do this DGI, this de-aging CGI thing where we can have more movies set in the past. Would love to see that. Once again, relying more on practical effects. None of this oversaturation of CGI. You know, just get a big boulder, have a whatever it is. Just create it and have it feel authentic to the cast and to the crew and to the most importantly your audience. You want your audience to feel like they are in the movie, and when you have too much CGI, they can't connect. That's why so many people complain about it. Um, so yeah, I I do hope and wish going forward that they take this franchise, and once again, this was a good first step. I'm hoping they take the good from this movie and then apply it more to the next movie and leave what didn't work from this movie, because Indiana Jones is such a great franchise. I could see it, like I used James Bond before as an example of just different characters, but I can see this being a franchise where Indiana Jones can go on for the next 100, 200 years, like kind of like Doctor Who in a sense, but obviously that's different because he's a Time Lord, same guy, but where this story can be retold and be recast over time, and it's a timeless story, and it deserves to be retold, as we go on, because we want to see more stories in this universe, just like James Bond does. As time goes on, we get to see more. Obviously it's different because it's more modern, but for the sake of Indiana Jones, modernized stuff could work with a new lead. Like I said, if it's Indiana Jones' son and we're going into the future, he's not going to be exactly like Indiana Jones. He's going to be slightly different, and we're going into a new world. And, if we're going to commit to that, let's do that. And once again, obviously CGI is going to still be needed and used, but bring in more practical effects. The movie, obviously it's a little different, but Wes Anderson, Asteroid City, the entire set design is all practical. And so, yeah, take note, studios. Practical, obviously, it's not easy to do, but it's worth it. It's really worth it because you don't just want an initial run. You want a timeless run, a show or a movie that people will keep coming back to in 20 years, in 50 years, in 200 years. And when it's bad, rushed CGI, you're not going to get that. If you want residuals, good, amazing residuals, you have to make something that people are going to want to come back to, even when CGI is 20 times better, because guess what? You didn't use CGI. You used a practical effect that people could not tell was real or not, or it is real, but people couldn't tell that, that it was a fake boulder versus a real boulder because they just see the boulder rolling by, and I think therein lies the key to selling your authenticity and making your audience feel immersed and wrapped. So, um, Once again, 3 out of 5 stars, being generous, better than Crystal Skull, hyped for the future. Thank you guys so much again for being a part of this. Y'all have a great week. Thank you.